Welcome to the You Go First podcast. This is the place where we bring together thought leaders, business pioneers, personal development gurus, and just about any person we discover that will inspire and compel you to go first in all areas of your life. Please welcome keynote speaker, philanthropist, and the official head dream chaser for Odyssey Teams, Inc., our host, Lane Hensley.
Welcome back to another episode of You Go First. I'm your host, Lane Hensley, and in my years of traveling around the planet, I've been lucky enough to partner with a lot of great keynote speakers, to thought leaders, to authors, and all of that. And so the vision of the You Go First podcast is to help inspire our listeners and ourselves to recognize places where we can go first out there in our lives. What are the things that stop us from going first? When do we wait for someone else to go first? And we inevitably end up as sort of the victim or prisoner in those situations. So as you're listening today, I'm really honored to have the time to be in the same room with my business partner, Bill John, who started Odyssey right in the sort of flutterings of the 1990s, coming out of the human development and personal development industries into the experiential game. And now I think we're in our 26th to 27th year in business together, running Odyssey and traveling around the world. So we're rarely in the same room, and today we're in studio. So if you're out there, I'm really blessed, and I want to just thank you, Bill, for taking the time to be here today with us and to be on You Go First. I got a lot of questions for you. So Bill, thanks for being here. How you feeling today?
Well, this is a new medium, and it's kind of exciting. I'm excited to be here, obviously. 27 years later, for many reasons, I'm excited to be here. So yeah, let's get rolling with Q&A and figure out where we're going with this podcast.
Yeah, well, podcast is, of course, something that we've talked about for a long time. And how do we get the message out there? Because in our work, we may fly for 2 or 3 days to get to some remote part of the world and work with a couple hundred people in 4 or 5 hours that we spend with them, or if it's a short keynote that you have, it just never feels like we can go deep enough because we've been thinking about these things for, decades,
right?
And all the books we read and all of that. So let's just start with people can go online and see a YouTube video or see you speaking. Maybe they've experienced your program. So let's take a little window in the behind the scenes world of Bill. What inspires you now? What's captured your imagination the most these days?
These days, I feel like it's still just the core of me that's still driven to want to find more dignity in work. I want to wake up every day and feel more inspired by what I do. And even though I get huge doses of inspiration when I'm leading a session and we've got all these people that are the synergy that comes from the work that we do, I still go back and put my head on the pillow and I say, was that good enough? And was I effective enough? Did I impact people's lives in a way that honors whatever they gave up to be there in that moment? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I doubt that. And so I still have this fuel that drives me, the core of me, that's still, how can I get people to recognize the dignity of their work, which ultimately is going to allow me to create more dignity in my work, more value, so that they see that their actions really make a difference, regardless of how far they feel from the customer or the ultimate benefit of their product or their service.
Yeah. Well, of course, I know you maybe as good as anybody in the world, and I've watched you, put in the millions of air miles and travel in different parts of the world. And I always call you a Renaissance man because you get, focused. I know you don't like that title,
no.
But you took a ride in a personal airplane and within months you've got your own airplane and your license and all those things. You took a trip to Africa and kind of got into a little bit of photography, and now you have a place in Africa. You've got, of course, some amazing camera equipment. So tell me about what Africa means to you, and how has photography helped you see maybe our work through a new lens, or how does Africa and photography play into Bill John's perspective?
That's a great question, and I could talk for days about that because I've thought a lot about what is this pull that I have to Africa, and what's the pull that I have to capturing animals on film, digital film, of course, these days. I think that the feeling that I get from it is similar to when I'm fly fishing in a river. And the thing about fly fishing in a river, especially for trout, which has always been the thing that I focus on, and of course we do that a lot, and Lane's a big fly fisherman, and some of our favorite times have been fishing when we're not working. So anyway, to be in nature is a grounding aspect of life. It's hard to not, it's hard to find rejuvenation in a city. It's hard to fill up my tank of peacefulness. Trout occur in places that are usually pristine. It's cold water, it's clear water, it's coming from the mountains, and it's a place that's usually pristine. So that's the affection that I've had specifically with trout. But catching the trout is, and then releasing it, and I always wonder why. What is that? Why do I feel like I need to capture this thing and hold it in my hand? And it has to do with the feeling of I'm connected to nature and I'm seeing the beauty of this animal. So going to Africa and being able to see these things that I've never seen before was that same kind of feeling, a more immersive feeling into nature. And then adding the camera to it and being able to zoom in and to see the whiskers on a lion, or the rosettes on a leopard, or just the staggering beauty of an impala's horns. Being able to zoom in on those things makes me feel like I'm seeing nature in a new way, and I'm really feeling it in a new way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our world is metaphor, and our world is just recognizing what about human behavior inspires us, inspires them. And in our programs, we're not out in nature looking at an impala, and we're not catching this beautiful trout in some remote river. But I think that, your dedication is to create these moments of wow with people, and these moments of, whoa, I was in touch with something in me that keeps me present, that makes me feel like I'm connected to something. And whether it's like in our hand building programs, which I know that you have built so many hands in that workshop, and you've taken it upon yourself to go, I'm going to India, I want to fit hands on people, and you've put hands on people. So if you can, like, our listeners are, I think that they're in a place in their life where maybe I can't go to Africa and see that. And if they experience our program, they have a sense of like, I understand like this connection I have. What's your formula? Well, how can you tell people that says, hey, how do they find those moments of connection that inspire them, make them go, wow, I'm part of
That's a great
this
question.
deep part of ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like, regardless of how good of a job you have, you could have the best job in the world, but you need to escape that at times. And you need to be able to step away, to recharge, to be able to see that job from a new perspective. And Einstein said that many of his greatest breakthroughs happened in moments of quietude, was the word that he used. And so when the mind turns off, then you're able to access things sometimes that you've never thought about before. Mm-hmm. And so that surprise, that ability to find things outside of work that make a difference inside of work, the value of metaphor that we live in the work that we do is really important. And it doesn't have to happen from building hands. It doesn't have to happen from building bikes and giving them to kids. It can happen from standing in a river and casting a fly or pointing a camera at an animal. But when we're introspective and we look for the connections that these things have in our lives, we realize that it's not disconnected. So my endeavor is always to look at work like that. How can work feel more like the dignity or the peacefulness of when I'm not working? How do I blend that to be part of my vocation? How do I bring that into work more often? And it turns out there's ways to do that. It turns out that it's a very reflexive thing for us in our nature to think that the grass is greener on the other side, or I need to go outside of my work to find that dignity in my life, or that feeling that I'm connected, the feeling that I'm making a difference, the feeling that my moment here matters.
Yeah. Tell us about like the first time you put a prosthetic hand on somebody. Just give us a quick snippet of how did that feel?
Great. Yeah. It's amazing when you ask a question, how quickly my mind can go back. It can just race right back to that moment. It's just amazing what a simple question can do to transport this time travel, to take me back, 8 years now when I first met this boy named Shiv Kumar in southern India. And I had built in the programs with our clients, we'd built several thousand hands before I had a chance to see what this hand actually does on a person's residual limb, what we call the amputated part of the arm. And I saw this boy be able to write for the first time after being electrocuted and losing his hand, trying to retrieve his kite from down power lines. And I got to see him write, and the first word that he wrote was love. And I thought, how profound is that this kid wrote? That was the first choice that he wrote after not being able to write for so long. And as I looked closer, I noticed that the carrying case, that these strangers that will never meet Shiv Kumar and never know his story, the word on the outside of the carrying case that they designed, the colorful image that they thought to convey, this message that they put on the outside of that case that his hand came in, was the word love.
Wow.
And that was the first word that he chose to write. And I could see the love in his father's eyes when he saw his boy write for the first time since his accident. And it was just incredible. And the goosebumps just fly all over me when I think about that kid. And the most amazing part of his story is the fact that he represents the 53,000 stories that are out there for me. And I feel like every one of those people that are receiving these hands is a boy like Shiv Kumar that has their own story. They have a father with eyes that I got to see. And my job in a program is always to come through with that essence, that experience, that feeling that I had seeing him, and trying to convey to people that even though we don't see the effects or the impacts that our actions have on people, the best that we can do is just imagine and challenge each other to think beyond the obvious, to feel deeper than perhaps we allow ourselves to, because it's hard to feel that kind of emotion a lot. And sometimes it's easier to run away from it, or not acknowledge that we have that kind of power, that we have that ability to impact other people.
Yeah, I mean we're in the business of giving people epic experiences in our programs, and then the team building programs or leadership development or Keynote. And of course, I know more than most about what that process has been like. And, as you're talking about this experience with Shiv Kumar, we know emotion creates memory. And that's where, I asked the question, bam, you're back into that emotion because you felt it so deeply. And thinking of photography in the eyes of the father, like the eyes are like the lens of the camera, and our brain is sort of the body of it, and how it interprets the light and interprets the things that we see. And I know, you spend a lot of time away from your family. You spend a lot of time on the road, reflecting on life and then trying to inspire groups. But I know this isn't a new thought for you. Before, when you were in college, in the early days of Odyssey, we were doing for almost 20 years a Women with Cancer Survivors Retreat, even though we would go and facilitate that. And obviously we're not women, and be there with 20 or 30 women that are struggling with breast cancer. And that real heart that you have of like wanting to make a difference for people in need. But I know that started when you were in college and with a roommate. So can you tell us about like that first sense of philanthropy, that first sense of bringing people together around a cause? Because I think in our training programs, we're bringing people together around a cause, whether that's running this company or some philanthropic endeavor, or hitting the numbers they have in Q4. But tell us about that first cause that you are a part of.
Yeah, thanks. I will. And I just got to acknowledge, if you're new to this podcast, the idea is that you feel something, and I don't think you're in any better hands as a guide through this to have Lane Hensley here. We often call him the giant nerve ending. Lane feels a lot, and Lane feels other people a lot, and he feels a great sense of commitment to helping people. And so his question is basically asking, of course, what you asked, which is how did I get started in that objective of service and helping people. And I had a wonderful roommate in my senior year named Jimmy. And Jimmy's dad was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease many years prior. And while I was his roommate that senior year, his dad passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease. And I watched the tragedy of that, and I was a big runner at the time. I was kind of my outdoor, that was my escape, and so I did a lot of running. And I decided that I wanted to do something for Jimmy and his family, his dad, and these other families that experienced Lou Gehrig's disease in some way. So I created a run called the Greek Streak, which was designed to create awareness and funds for Lou Gehrig's disease. While I should have spent a lot more time studying the books in my finance courses, I found myself, all of my attention was devoted to creating this run, designing the t-shirts, designing the course, marketing, getting participants, getting sponsors. And so when I graduated with my paltry GPA and barely made it through finance, looking back after I graduated, it was that was the keystone experience for me that set the course of the trajectory for me from that point on, which was, I was asking people to push themselves. I was asking people to sweat for something. I was challenging them to really push themselves, and it was for a cause. It was for something beyond just the fact that they were doing something better for themselves in this push and this through the sweat. And I knew that somehow, some way, I had to recreate that experience for myself. And being a race director, that floated across my radar. But I came across this amazing work that Phil Bryson and Tom Lutz were doing in bringing executives out in the wilderness and using the wilderness as a classroom to talk about business and leadership. And so studying with those guys and traveling the world, looking at them using the outdoors as a metaphor for work and leadership, that really opened the door to the trajectory that you and I have been on for the past 27 years, which is, of course, how do we get people to do something, feel something, think about something in a way that they have not thought about or felt or done before.
Mm-hmm. And when you say travel the world, I know you were in Russia after Chernobyl, working with families up there, in Bali, working with tech companies, doing huge rollouts for AT&T back in the whole new ball game era before the divestiture. I think that's the right word.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And, deregulation.
Yeah. So, you've been on the forefront of not only our industry when it comes to human development and personal performance and how teams come together, but you've been able to peek into all different kinds of parts of our world and different companies. So what parts of our world have shocked you the most or surprised you the most, or what companies have shocked and surprised you the most, if you can tell us?
Well, I think that, for me personally, especially given the political climate that we're in right now, I find myself in a divisive state, the feeling that I don't particularly like in myself. And it's not until I find my way into conversation and into something less reactive and less reflexive that I find that there's so much more commonality in all of us across cultures, and that's the beauty of being able to travel, and why I feel like a lot of the issues that we have today are from people making assumptions about people without really knowing where they're coming from. And that happens in business, and that happens in politics, and it happens in families, and it happens in my family and our business. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest surprise to me, I suppose, is just it feels like a surprise, and it shouldn't be, that this homecoming, the opportunity to connect at a deeper level with people, it still surprises me that it can work as effectively as it does. And when we get invited into programs, we get invited in to facilitate that process. And for some people, they can get there with a couple of beers or a couple of whiskeys or a couple glasses of wine. But because of that medium, they may forget that conversation the next day, or it may lead them down a path that may not be as effective as possible. So we become that agency or that medium for people to connect in a way that they don't need alcohol, they don't need they don't need things that might derail them from a larger pursuit together.
Yeah. Well, the vision of Odyssey, the word Odyssey for us is a journey marked with notable occurrences, and creating those odysseys and those journeys. And part of the challenge has been, we're standing in front of audiences usually that are 90 to 95% skeptic in the beginning. And then in the end, it's best program ever. And oh my gosh. So what do you think changes the most in people to go from that skeptic to that, from skeptic and prisoner, then like, oh, is this just another canned, meeting I had to leave my family to be at? And in the end, what is the light that you see in their eyes that has transformed?
That's a great question. And I think that's been part of my own personal struggle, is because I think that I'm the worst participant in the world. I feel I am so skeptical. And I just can resonate with those people that don't want to be there, because I don't blame them. They still, at that moment, they still haven't figured out what's in it for them. And they haven't been told in a way that they really understand. And unfortunately, they're not going to understand it until they've spent an hour with us. They're not going to understand it. They're going to have their own judgment, their own experience, their own prejudices against it. So the goal for me is not to make them feel like it's not to rah them through that. It's for them to feel acknowledged that that is a super valid feeling, and I feel that too. And I would not be doing this here today with you if I wasn't convinced that that this was not going to honor your time, whatever you had to give up to be here. If I wasn't convinced of that, there's no way I could stand in front of you, because I am that skeptic. I am probably the worst skeptic, and that's why we've been successful in the programs that we've developed, is because I come from that place of, man, this better be good. They paid us a lot to be here, and this better be good, because all the things people have going on in their lives right now, there's no reason for them to do something that shouldn't bring them a lot of value. We are too busy. People give up too much in their lives too often for things that don't matter. Yeah, that's well said. I think that's part of why we stay up at night and have long meetings and trying to figure out how can we be better, because some people just follow that, well, you're never going to get everybody. And it's like such an easy excuse for a presenter to say, well, they're always going to have 5% skeptics. And I just believe that there's a way to get everybody. That everybody in the room wants to believe again. They want to feel like they matter again. They want this awakening. And I know in the very beginning of our work, people are like, knock them dead. And you would say to me, knock them alive. And that knock them alive feeling is like, how do we each, as a listener out there, where have we gone asleep? In the dreams, I call myself head dream chaser. And, how do we get knocked alive? You got knocked alive, whether it was flying your plane or when you took some pictures in Africa and thought, holy cow, there's a depth to this place that I never realized, I never saw before. And when we're standing in front of a group of 500 or 5,000 skeptics, and then in the end, they've been knocked alive, like, oh my gosh, I can contribute. I am a part of this. I'm not just a piece to this, I'm not just in the back in this meeting, what happened without me, but I am a part of this. And I think when we create experiences for people to have that awakening, like, this wouldn't be the same without me. And where can people be knocked alive like that in their lives? And I just say here in kind of a close, like, what's that next thing for you that you're either working on that could help knock people alive or bring more life to, or bring new perspective to what they see through their lens? Is there any new project on the forefront that's got you excited? Well, we have added new experiences that serve other people. And so the Team Mosaic was the latest installment for us with the service component, and the fact that we've chosen to serve the Black Mambas, the anti-poaching, all-female anti-poaching unit in Africa, and pledge money to help in the protection of wildlife in Africa, and the kits that we give locally that are a way for teachers to bring in the conversation through this artistic teaming event for kids. That's really exciting for me. Seeing new connections that we can make to service. That's definitely one that resonates with me right now. I think in the broader, longer view of Odyssey, it will continue to be how do we surprise people with something they've never seen or done or felt before. And I think that those are coming. I never expected, when we created the first Life Cycles program almost 20 years ago now, when we decided to have them build bikes, and then the real key to that program was having the kids come in to surprise the participants. When we realized that the bike was a metaphor for product, and the kids became the face of the customer, and we could then start talking about quality and commitment and service and how all these things connect in any company's work. That was a huge step for us, and it came from this appetite and what I've talked about, this appetite that you and I both have to surprise people, to surprise ourselves. And I think another one of those is on the horizon, and I'm not sure exactly what it is, and it keeps me up at night. Because I think that, we've seen so many companies now that have copied our bike program and that are providing other service projects. And while I'm really proud of that, I do feel like there is a shelf life to these experiences where they're not going to be a surprise element for people. They're not going to understand that these service projects were designed first and foremost to have people reflect on the way that they work, the way that they see their work, the way that they connect with their customers, the way that they see their customers, their products, etc. Right now, it's just kind of a CSR thing for a lot of companies, and they're just checking the box. That's a real tragedy for me, and I don't know if we can turn that tide. It feels like the momentum away from using this as a really powerful medium, we're starting to lose control of that medium or that message. And so we're going to need to think about what is that next thing that we can come in, and nobody's ever done it before. And we've done that many times in our past 27 years. So that's on the radar for me, and I'm open to that. And I feel like we're going to find that thing again. We just have to, you and I have to be on long drives, and like we used to come up with just some of our best ideas, just talking on a long drive down a road, going to nowhere with some fishing rods.
Well, it's been awesome talking to you today. This idea of what happens to CSR, it does feel good to do good. And I think what we're trying to do is connect that feel good to do good in the philanthropic realm to the best philanthropy any company can do is be successful.
That's
and
right.
to hire more people and to provide a better service for their customers. And that you don't want your whole team to quit and join the Peace Corps to give back to the world. Like giving back to the world is by being a great, appliance store, or being a great hotel, and cleaning people's room with passion for the fact that, hey, these people are away from home, and I want them to feel good about where we are and welcome them in a real sincere way. And that's what I think that tragedy is for us, is when this CSR component is sold in a way that it's not an interwoven part to every day as an opportunity for service,
right?
And to our internal customers, to our families, to our kids, to our spouse, to the people in our communities. And when you're walking down the street and you see a piece of trash, you could pick that piece of trash up and be in service of, the kind of community you want to be in. And, certainly there's so much to talk about with you, man. We've had so many great years together. And I do feel like we are on the edge of something here. And I hope that the people listening feel like they're on the edge of something in their life. And that that sense of, I want to keep pushing myself comes out of that burden of potential, that Charlie Brown quote. The greatest burden in life is potential. And I think kids today face that great burden because they have access to so much that potential can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think everybody feels that. And maybe we give them an opportunity to be present and connect and feel like they've stepped into some of that potential through the Odyssey programs. And just in close, I know people might be like, wow, that's just his business partner. It must be easy for them to get together. And it's not. We're probably in the headquarters, 2 or 3 times a year. So I'm thankful that you're here as part of our launch of the podcast and one of our first episodes to get to share a little of the window of, the why of Odyssey and how you've led Odyssey and led me in our partnership to this point in our company. And, so I'm talking to Bill John, my business partner, and of course, keynote speaker, program delivery facilitator and philanthropist from college days to now. And I just can't wait to see what's next for you and for our company. So a big thank you to anyone listening out there and checking in on our world. We hope that you find us and learn more about that Team Mosaic program we're talking about. Really excited about that. I think we're in the 50,000 range as far as hands-on people, over about 30,000 bikes given to kids that really would never have something like it. Skateboards were given to kids. So we're giving away a lot. We are in the business of giving, but it's not just about the physical item we're giving people. It's the experience and the inspiration. So thanks for giving us some time today and inspiring us today, Bill.
Thanks, Steve.
I'd like to thank my business partner, Bill John, again for joining us today on You Go First. He is the CEO, keynote speaker, and world traveler for Odyssey Teams, Inc. You can follow our social medias at Odyssey Teams, ODYSSEY Teams. And you can follow Bill on his personal social media at Bill John Photography. You'll see his photos and inspirations. Again, thanks for listening today.
Thanks for listening to another episode of You Go First. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to listen to another episode, you can find us at yougofirst.live, or you can see more about our host, Lane Hensley, on his Instagram at OneDreamChaser. To learn more about his company, Odyssey Teams Inc., go to odysseyteams.com or follow all their social media channels at Odyssey Teams. Thanks again, and we hope that you will go first to share our podcast with a friend or colleague. Now, you go first.